Good Thursday evening. I'm Joe Gilloway, and along with my partner, Bill Bostic, we'd like to welcome you to episode number 4 of This and That, the podcast, where we'll meet people and explore issues from all realms of life and the world we live in. We'll introduce you to tonight's guest in just a moment, as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show. Our much appreciated This and That, the podcast sponsors. And they are Team PA AAU Basketball, Be a Hero, Hire a Hero, and Rickabaz Electric. Thanks to those great local businesses for their support of our podcast. We very much appreciate it. Upcoming, and we're still trying to, we've sourced these people, Bill. Bill, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing fine. I mean, I have some grandfather duties, and they were running way too close. So I'm glad I made it under the wire here.
Life ain't easy, bud. Upcoming on This and That, the podcast, one more heavy show, okay? Politics, more politics. But we want to try to get these Central Dauphin School Board members in. We have commitments from Jeannie Fortney Webster, Eric Epstein, and President Mike Jacobs. And that should be a big show. Everybody's, if you care, if you're a taxpayer, whether you have kids or not in the district, you should care enough about what's going on with your school board and our local school board here.
Yeah, plus there's some big happenings with buying buildings, expanding kindergarten, all that.
Absolutely, yeah. They're the two big. They're the two big ones I'm familiar with right now. So we will do our best to get these three folks scheduled on a night that all five of us, Bill, myself, and the three of them are able to make it as well. Okay, so our disclaimer is the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants who state them and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or positions held by This and That, the podcast, as an entity, Bill or myself, or the sponsors who support the show. So that's that. And Bill, let's talk about whatever you want to talk about here for a few minutes before we, again, I want to mention that we're not going to stay this heavy, okay? We've had a lot of politics here, all right? And you and I both like politics. You're a politics nerd. I'm just kind of a politics, whatever's below a nerd. But
well, you have to get that right, Joe. I'm actually a local government nerd.
Local government nerd, okay. And I'm a fan of politics. I enjoy politics, so I'm not going to deny that. But it's something that we want to try to take a good look at, but we also want to bring some musicians in and talk about a lot of different stuff. But by the way, thanks for the outline. Again,
no problem.
Great outline. It's good to feel organized, and this helps me feel organized. So go ahead, Bill. What do you got to say tonight?
Well, a couple things happened over the last week, and I've been thinking that I really need to find a personal taser of some sort with what's happening in the North Mountain Road corridor. I don't know if you know, we talked about the fire at Color Bar last week, a hairdresser, right?
Yes.
But that was just the tip of the iceberg.
What's a personal taser? I don't mean, you mean to taser yourself?
Yeah, no, it's, you know, the police use the tasers, right?
I know that, but
these are like a scaled down version that would still disable someone for a little bit of time while you escape.
And who are you looking to disable?
Well, here's what's happened. I mean, the Color Bar on April 12th, that was a Saturday morning, burned. They had to relocate down the street a little bit. But that same day, 3 Colombian nationals were arrested in the North Mountain Road corridor.
Yeah.
They were believed to be associated with organized crime. And on Facebook, there was some chatter about the streets being blocked, the blue streets, some of them being blocked, and police running through the neighborhoods and all that. So they did capture 3 of the 5.
Good. I saw that. That's great.
And 2 escaped, so they're still looking for them.
That's not good. But our Lower Paxton Township Police Force do a great job, Bill.
Yep.
We mentioned that. Was it just last week with Mr. Gottschall? Yeah.
And then this past Sunday was another big day for the first responders here. Saturday night, about 9:30, a car crashed through the Turkey Hill convenience store on North Mountain Road.
How does that happen?
Huh?
How does that happen?
I believe the scuttlebutt is the woman hit the gas pedal instead of the brake and went through a window just to the left of the entrance. It took it all out, took out the skill games,
Oh,
and they have
man.
it boarded up. This is the second time it's happened at that store.
The last thing you want to lose is the skill games machine. And next to last would be the coffee machine.
Well, yeah, the coffee machine was spared. That was my big concern.
Okay, that's good.
Because I go there for coffee, as you know.
That's good. That's good.
And also on Sunday, there were two suspects arrested at the Quality Inn on North Mountain Road who are suspected to be part of a South Carolina homicide.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so I mean, all these things are happening. But the other part I wanted to share with you is I really got into my local government nerd mode over the weekend, thinking about, Lower Paxton Township still having to replace one supervisor.
Right.
They replaced 3. They have one more to get an interim or temporary term. And just to show, this is proof that I am a nerd. Look, I want you to look at all this. This represents about 10 years of work covering local government meetings. These are the clips from the Patriot News. I had to clip the things out, send them in to get paid. But this is how many meetings I went to.
That's a lot of meetings.
A lot of meetings.
I also need to mention, I like you're in a cabin now this week, or kind of a little house in the prairie look, or
in my bunker here in Lingelstown. But I had Bobby Fairways and Joey Colcuts come in here and build the wall, so it just wasn't all white.
And that's a Swiss Alps cap there.
Yeah, this is actually part of. I don't know if I ever told you about this, but I was in 2 professional wrestling events as Lingelstown mayor.
I think you did tell me that.
Yeah. So this is part of that outfit. But actually, it also represents being a reporter and sort of being in that nerd mode. But I was thinking about the replacement of those, and I learned from talking to county officials that there'll be 2 seats on the primary ballot where you'll be able to pick out whatever candidate you want to run. There's only one competitive race. We're not going to get into that tonight. Republicans don't have anyone to pick. They just have one candidate. The Democrats, for one seat, have 2 people running. But there's 2 more seats to fill. They were there all those vacancies, the 2 of them happened too late to go through the primary process. So long story short, right now, at some point in the next couple months, the county is going to be looking for the local Republicans and local Democrats to pick someone, give them a name to put on the ballot.
Okay.
And that's the process they're going to use. Now, the only problem with that is the public is sort of left out of that process normally, because these local committees will meet. Mm-hmm. Usually it's not a public meeting. They meet as part of their regular process and go through this thing and pick out a candidate.
And that's the legal process. I only say that because I know people may get upset and they're going to talk about transparency and look what they're doing now. No, that's the way it's in the books, that it's supposed to be the routine that it's supposed to be followed. Yeah,
they're not breaking any laws or following the routine.
Correct.
But I'm going to make a suggestion that we feature openness, given all the controversies, the finger pointing, the yelling and screaming at meetings that's happened. It seems to be turning around a little bit now, but we've had some contentious meetings where people are very suspicious of what's going on behind the scenes, that we feature openness. And even though they don't have to, I would really encourage the local Republicans to publicize when they're meeting, so any Republican that's interested could attend and see how that process works out. Right. And the Democrats, the same thing.
Absolutely. Along the lines of openness, and I know we have a guest waiting for us in the green room, and we haven't fed him or anything, right? He's just waiting.
We're on borrowed time.
Along the lines of openness and transparency, our guest last week, Lower Paxton Township Manager Brad Gottshaw, he has agreed and he volunteered to make cameo appearances moving forward. Right. Meaning, as things crop up or just kind of state of the union, state of what's going on in the township, he's agreed to come on, for 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time, maybe not an entire show dedicated, unless we need one. But, and I thought that was great. So we will have Mr. Gottshaw back on again. All right. Are we ready to introduce?
I just wanted to make one additional point.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll bring our guest in.
Yes,
the other part is to eliminate some of the politics. What I'd really recommend as well is that the supervisors for this last position, for filling the seat of Paul Navarro, consider bringing someone in that's not going to run in the fall, so that they sort of strip out all the politics. Whoever lands in that seat is not, it's not going to have a stake in the fall election.
Okay, that's
And
a
I
good
actually
thought.
volunteered to do that. Whether it'll work out or not, we'll see. I'm certainly prepared to and have the experience, as you saw, with all this stuff.
Take one for the team, huh? Take one for the township.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, do you want to introduce our guest right now, or should I bring him in?
You can bring him in. Why don't you do what you were going to do, and we'll start off.
What was I going to do?
I don't know. Bring him in, and I'll figure it out.
There he is.
The
PA
honorable
House Rep Russ Diamond from the 102nd District in Lebanon County. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right, good. Bill?
Yeah, Russ. So what we're going to do is sort of not start off with the legislation or anything that we want to
Okay.
talk about, but get to know you a little bit, because
All right.
I've known of you and talked with you a few times over the last 20 years. I think and you have an interesting story, and you're the kind of person that I think some people will find your story worth listening to, and because when they see you speaking to the House, they really don't know who you are. They just hear what you say on a particular piece of legislation or a resolution.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to kick things off. I mean, it seems like your introduction to the political world happened in 2005, Operation Clean Sweep. Is that true, or are you involved in
Well,
something before that?
actually, I was involved a little bit before that. I actually ran for Congress and State House in 2004 as a
Okay.
libertarian. That was my first foray into politics. And then I quickly learned that third-party politics is not the way to go in Pennsylvania if you ever actually want to make a difference. So in early 2005, I switched to Republican, and kind of had my sights set on taking on my state senator, who was Chip Brightbill at the time. And I mean,
that majority leader, right? He was the majority leader.
Yeah, he was the majority leader at that time, and that would have been a very chaotic thing to do, you know. Or I don't know what that. How do you pronounce that? Don Quixote, chaotic or whatever it was. I mean, it would have been.
Well,
I was very
a guy
politically
like that has some
adventurous.
momentum.
Oh yeah,
has a little bit of momentum, a little bit of kind of
yes,
wind
he
in the
does.
sails, you know.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And there's some backstory there about, you know, how I became a thorn in his side during my libertarian run against Tim Holden and Scott Paterno, who I just saw yesterday, by the way. So that was early 2005. I switched to Republican, realizing that, hey, if you're in Lebanon County and you want to make a difference, you got to be a Republican. You can't be a third party, you know. Then in July of 2005, the legislature gave itself this midnight pay raise that violated the Constitution in 5 different ways. And, you know, I was pretty ticked off about it. I watched it live on television. It was 2:00 in the morning. And about a week later, I bumped into my nephew, who runs a pizza shop, and he was in his 30s, and he's pretty apolitical. And he just, you know, kind of rattled off some facts about this pay raise. And I thought, oh my gosh, if he doesn't pay attention. So if he doesn't pay attention and he's as ticked off about this as I am, maybe there's something here that I should capitalize on politically. So I started this group called Operation Clean Sweep. And, you know, because of my very short history in politics, I realized that the only thing that you can do to actually make change in Pennsylvania is actually get candidates elected to office. So our goal was to recruit candidates to run against the entire legislature. Right. And our slogan was vote them all out. And we didn't raise candidates in every single race, but we did support 113 candidates of all different political viewpoints, different party affiliations. You know, a lot of those folks actually went on, in the next cycle, 13 of the folks that we supported and kind of recruited became members of the House of Representatives. There was a couple people who were running for Senate, who they were kind of affiliated with us, but didn't want to say they were affiliated with us for various reasons. And they became members of the Senate, including, in 2006, the Senate pro tem was ousted. The Senate Majority Leader, Chip Brightbill, he was ousted as well. And then along the way, we also took on 2 retention races for Supreme Court Justice. That was in 2005, and that was kind of like our first political victory, where Russell Nigro got thrown out. And, we kind of based that argument on, well, just before the pay raise, the Supreme Court had okayed what the General Assembly had done, a gut and replace bill, unusual, to bring slots into Pennsylvania. And that's kind of what gave the General Assembly license to do the pay raise in the same way. So we kind of, I don't want to say we scapegoated the two Supreme Court justices, but hey, they made that decision. And it was the first time ever in Pennsylvania history that a Supreme Court justice was not retained. So then after that, we went to the primary election in 2006, and then the general election in 2006. And overall, that year, there was a 55 seat turnover between people who just decided it wasn't cool to run anymore because they knew they were going to get beat, or people who actually got beat. That was 55 seats in the General Assembly we turned over. Now, that's not a big number now because that happens on a regular basis now. But then it was a huge number. And it was, at that time, regular turnover for the General Assembly was usually about 2% every election cycle. And we raised it up to 24%. And then it backed down after that. And now, people come and go a lot quicker. And that percentage is, it's not unusual to have, 30 or 40 seats change personalities in a single election year. But back then, 24% was major. It was the biggest political movement by a non-political party. We won a bunch of awards and stuff. So that's how I really got my start in politics. And then I ran for a bunch of offices since then. I lost 6 elections before I won one, which was the seat that I'm in now. I won that in 2014. And here we are 11 years later, and I'm a member of the House of Representatives, chairman of the Gaming Oversight Committee, and on the Republican side, and, trying to get other things done as well.
There's a lot to be said for persistence, huh? one for 7, not that bad when the 1 is what landed you where you are today.
Well, yeah, I'm now 6 and 6. So
that's right.
I'm 6 and 6. I got a 500 record now.
Can I jump in, Bill?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to kind of dummy this down. Okay.
Okay.
For me and for some of the viewers that don't know, because it's important that they do know. What does a state house rep do? Representative Diamond. First of all, how many days are you in session? Okay, we'll start with that, because we know when you're in session, then you're going to work, you're sitting there, you're interacting with your colleagues, you're trying to pass bills. But other than that, what do you do?
Yeah, so we're generally in session between 70 and 80 days a year. Generally, when we go in session, it's a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of a week, and that's because we can't do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday because you have people coming in from 4 hours away, and unfortunately for them, they have to stay overnight. I'm lucky. I live only 30 miles away from, or 30 minutes away from the Capitol. I get to come home every night. They all have to stay overnight, if they're coming in from Pittsburgh or Erie. So when we meet in session, it's generally Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And of course, our job is to make laws. We legislate. That's our job. But in our downtime, we make ourselves available to our constituents who often need to solve problems that they're having, getting through some red tape with some state agencies. For instance, if they're having problems, with PennDOT renewing their registration or their titles or anything like that. If they're having, and then, I represent 17 municipalities here in Lebanon County. Each state rep represents about 64,000 people. For me, that's 17 municipalities. You guys in Lower Paxton Township, that's a big municipality. I think that's about 55,000 people there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So you're almost one state rep all by yourself there. But here I have 17 municipalities. I've got the 4 boroughs and 13 townships. So I also assist those municipalities when they want to, like if they need to update their water lines or sewer lines. There are various grant programs that are available in Pennsylvania, and I assist them, get through that grant process, try to bring some of that money back home that, we collect way too many taxes in Pennsylvania, and then turn them around in competitive fashion in order to, a lot of it's political, but I try to help out our municipalities as much as possible, qualify for grants and, small loans in order to upgrade their infrastructure or, help their library out, what have you, that sort of thing. And, constituents come in and they have this problem or that problem. Sometimes constituents come in and they say, look, I'll just give you one example that was just very successful. Was we had a constituent that came in and she has an undiagnosed medical problem, and her doctor said, have you ever been exposed to radon? And she wanted to get DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, keeps records of radon tests if they're conducted by a certified radon person here in Pennsylvania. She wanted to get the records of a property she used to own, that she moved away from, and DEP wouldn't give them to her. And because the law said only the current property owner can get it. So she needed these to help her doctor diagnose whatever she's suffering from. So she called our office, and it was much to my surprise that she wasn't available to get it, even though she was the owner of record of the property. So I introduced a bill to change that law so that, if you were an owner of record in the past and the data was gathered while you owned it, DEP can give you that data. That bill has passed the House. That's House Bill 448. It passed the House just 2 weeks ago. It's over in the Senate. Hopefully the Senate moves it and we can get that signed into law. So folks in her, and look, that's not a whole lot of people probably who are in that situation, but it just makes sense that DEP should be able to give that information out if it's actually data from when that person was the property owner. So, it's that sort of thing that we do for constituents as well. Is if they have a problem and we can change a law to help them out, it's fantastic. That's really what we do. Yeah.
The largest, most colossal issues down to cats stuck in tree, right?
Well, we don't do
everything. Who does the cat stuck in tree?
We don't do cat stuck in tree, but I tell you what we do. What we do a lot of is, folks will call and say, "Hey, there's a pole that's broken over here, and the wires are hanging on the trees."
Right.
We'll try to coordinate with either emergency services or Verizon or MedEd or whoever is, find out who's actually responsible for it and try to get it cleared up. So. Yeah, not cats stuck in trees, but close. Wires stuck in trees. You're close. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right, Bill.
Yeah, I wanted. I think one of the things that people miss out with you, Representative Diamond, is can I call you Russ? Is that all right?
Yeah. I don't use titles, man. It's I
didn't think so.
I'm such a regular dude. It's not funny. I'm telling you.
Between the time you actually had I think a short stint where you were trying to run for governor as an independent, and I actually gathered some petitions for you out at the.
Yes, thank you.
It was called the Big M out in Middletown.
Yes.
Yes.
I was out there, I think at least a couple weekends, hawking the, trying to get people to come over and sign your petition.
Yeah.
But between that time and you got elected, you said you went through a lot of different elections.
Yeah.
You had various things you did. I knew you ran a business. I think you drove truck and all that kind of stuff, but you You did a lot of
Yeah.
interesting things.
Yeah. So long before I got involved in politics, I was a musician.
Right.
And after a couple years stint as a D-list rock star, I opened a recording studio on the east side of Lebanon in a little schoolhouse, and that that lasted about 7 years. And I got into duplicating cassette tapes for my clients,
Okay.
and then I got into duplicating compact discs for my clients. And I was like the first in Pennsylvania to offer that service. I was the first in Pennsylvania to put that service, advertise that service online. I
Okay.
was the first in the industry to actually put all my pricing in self-serve format online. And that landed me at number 3 on Google. Back when Google was kind of like a free for all, it's like the best sites got to the top. You didn't have to pay anything. It wasn't
Right.
pay to
Okay.
play. So I was up there for like probably 3 years. So I had a pretty successful business manufacturing and duplicating CDs, CD-ROMs, cassettes for musicians, for software people. I got into doing custom labeled blank CDRs for like hospital systems, medical imaging centers, that sort of thing. And I did that up until 2012 when, nobody was printing CDs anymore. Everybody was downloading their
Okay.
music and all that sort of thing. And I was able to sell off half of my business and just keep some contracts going for the imaging centers. And then I decided in 2012, I decided, well, I'm going to just go out. I was single. I'm just going to go out and hit the road as a truck driver. I can run my business off my laptop in the back of the cab. So I spent a year and a half as an over-the-road trucker, just spending 5-6 weeks away from home at a time, running my business out of the back of my cab. And then I actually, this is the interesting part. When I did that, I swore off politics. I said, I'm
Oh,
done.
really? Okay.
I'm done. And it was kind of a relief. But then Rosemary Swanger, who was one of the candidates we supported during Operation Clean Sweep,
Uh-huh.
she got elected and she served 8 years. And one morning I'm in my cab of my truck sleeping, and she calls me and she goes, Russ, I'm going to retire, and they've changed the district lines, and you are now in the district that I represent.
Okay.
So I think you should run. And I went, oh, just when I get out, they drag me back in,
They pull you back in.
And they pull you back in, yeah. And I thought, okay, well, Rosemary, I'll think about it. And then the next day, the then chairman of the Lebanon County Republican Party called me and said the same thing. And I said, let me think about it. And I thought about it, and I conversed with a couple friends about it. And what I decided to do was to run a poll
Okay.
and see if it was possible, if I could win or not. And it turned out the poll came back. My name recognition was really good. And I thought, okay, let's do this. And I campaigned actually from the road. I didn't really come back and campaign at all. I was campaigning on YouTube. I was campaigning on Facebook. And I did it from the road. I didn't want to have to quit my job as a trucker to come
That's
back
very
and campaign.
interesting. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So, and my name recognition, people would have remembered what I'd done with Clean Sweep. So, and then, a lot of stuff happened on the way to the funny farm. And, eventually I won that election, and here I am 11 years later.
So let me just reintroduce the show before we move on. You're watching This and That, the podcast brought to you by our wonderful This and That sponsors, and they are Team PA AAU basketball. Bill, I got to get bigger signs. I promise I will. Rickabaw's Electric. Be a hero, hire a hero, and we appreciate their support. And our guest tonight is State Rep Russ Diamond of Lebanon County. Be sure to follow our Facebook page and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are watching us on YouTube. Bill?
Yeah, Russ, you see what I'm wearing now?
I do. Go Birds.
You're an Eagles fan, right?
I am, and I'll let you in. I'll let you in on a little secret.
What's that?
I'm going to the White House to see the Eagles and the president on Monday. So,
how did you pull that off?
Well, a certain congressman owed me a little favor. So.
Okay. And I have one other sort of comical anecdote before we look at the legislation that we want to find more out about and talk about. With your recording business,
Yeah.
I know it's pretty well known, I think, by people who follow politics in Pennsylvania that you had some contact with Taylor Swift.
Yes, I did. When I was in the business of making compact discs, actually duplicating short runs of compact discs on site in my little business on Main Street in Annville. Taylor Swift was probably 13 or 14 years old, and she needed some copies of some demos that she made. And she came into my shop once with her mother. Then her mother came back in another time for a different project. So that's my brush with greatness for Taylor Swift. She was she seemed like a sweet kid, quiet kid. I'm sure she's totally forgotten who I am, and that's okay.
Yeah, but you had another brush with Taylor recently in the House when they brought up a resolution to honor her in some way, and you gave a great speech, including some singing, and not wanting to support it. So
I didn't want to. I mean, I love Taylor Swift, and I actually was a big fan of her music up until a few years ago. But I didn't think that we should honor her because she left Pennsylvania. She divorced us, and she never looked back. And she's paying her.
What was the song that you gave a line?
I believe it was "We will never, ever, ever getting back together," that sort of thing. She broke up with us. So
I love that.
I saw a video of that speech, and the cool part was beyond what you were saying and how you were presenting it, because you have some performance talent.
Now, in Taylor's defense, I never thought I'd be defending Taylor Swift, but don't you kind of have to move out of Pennsylvania once you reach a certain level? Well, I think she's in Nashville. And I'm not like a big Taylor Swift. No,
no. We live in an internet age, my friend. You don't have to move out of Pennsylvania to do it.
I just don't know of any Pennsylvania musicians that are still hanging out around here, but I don't know. I really don't.
Well,
Breaking Benjamin.
Okay, all right.
I watched that video, and the funny part was there was a couple of women in the background that were just enjoying the heck out of what you were doing. Your colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy making some of my colleagues laugh sometimes. Look, what we do in Harrisburg is serious business. There are opportunities at times for levity, and I think that levity goes a long way in forging relationships, sometimes relationships that you wouldn't forge otherwise. Yeah. And that's really what's important in Harrisburg, especially in these times where it's like, people just really want to shout across the canyon of political divide and say, you guys stink, or you guys stink. And I try to forge relationships so that, and we don't have to agree on everything, but if you don't have a relationship with anybody, you're not going to get anything done. And it doesn't matter whether it's politics or business or anything like that. Human relationships are probably the most important part of life, no matter what you're doing. So absolutely. I always try to use whatever tools I can to do that. Sometimes levity on the house floor is one way to do that.
Well, one place you get levity, and this is the last point. I looked at the schedule today for the PA House and look what we were looking at. And there was a huge list of resolutions that came up. So things like this, a resolution to recognize a week in May as National Stuttering Awareness Week in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And another one to honor Jimmy Stewart Day. So what do you think about all those resolutions? Is that really a good thing?
Well, look, everything that we do on the floor in Harrisburg is important to somebody. Okay. And I have some of those resolutions on there too. For instance, I have my dearest friend, my wife, she has epilepsy. So I have a resolution in to mark November as National Epilepsy Month.
Okay.
That's important to me. I think it's important that people are aware of epilepsy and they familiarize themselves with maybe what to do if they ever see somebody have a seizure, what not to do, that sort of thing. So, and we did one, I believe it was yesterday, on ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And So everything is important to somebody. Now, when Republicans were in the majority, we took those non-binding resolutions or those non-controversial resolutions like, Epilepsy Month or ALS or something like that. And we kind of grouped them together and we would pass them as a group. And then if you wanted to speak on the floor of the House, we did it on Wednesday, on our last day at the end of session, rather than take up everybody's time. The Democrats are doing it so that we're doing it as part of. And look, we changed that when we were in the majority because there was just getting so many of them that we were spending a whole lot of time on them. When the Democrats took back the majority, they moved it back, and now we're doing it during the regular course of the day. But there are some of them that may seem silly to some people. And not worth our time, but everything that we do is important to somebody.
Yeah, well, based on that explanation, that really helps me out because just as an observer, you wonder why some of them are so to the individual seem so ridiculous, but that's a great explanation.
And Bill, just a side note, Jimmy Stewart also left Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
Yes, he did.
There you go.
Yeah.
Indiana,
yes, he did.
Pennsylvania.
Probably Hollywood. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, he was from Indiana, Pennsylvania, and I'm
No,
not.
he also.
Did you vote for Jimmy Stewart Day?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, there's very few resolutions that I vote against. Only if it's some kind of. Sometimes somebody will try to sneak something in with somebody who's a very controversial and maybe has a negative personal history, and we try to scrutinize those as much as we can as a caucus before we go up and vote on the floor.
And Bill,
what?
you'll never get a day. You'll never get a day, buddy.
We'll never have Bostic Day. Never.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I think anyone that was in professional wrestling events probably doesn't qualify.
No.
So anyways, we're talking with Representative Russ Diamond. We're going to move into the main part of what I was advertising and Joe was advertising as far as the issue, and that is better known as HB 900, I believe. And
yes.
It's a bill to start the process to eliminate all property taxes in Pennsylvania. So as easily as you can. I mean, it's a very short bill. I read it.
Yeah.
What's the bill all about, and how you came into this?
Well, the bill, House Bill 900, is a constitutional amendment that would set a deadline where all property taxes in Pennsylvania would be abolished. And it doesn't say how we're going to replace the revenue, because that's a conversation we need to have in the General Assembly and amongst the general public about how we're going to go about doing that. And the reason I've introduced it this way, which, to some people seems backwards, some people say, well, you got to tell us how you're going to replace the revenue. And I think, no, I just want to set a deadline, and the deadline would be approximately 5 years from now. The reason I set the deadline 5 years from now is because that's pretty much how much time it usually takes to get a constitutional amendment done. And that's looking at it optimistically. I've had this, the ironic part is I've had this bill I didn't introduce it last session, but all 4 of the previous sessions that I've been elected, I introduced this bill. Had we adopted this and put it on the ballot and the people approved it and ratified it, we would now be into, because my original cutoff date was July 1st, 2022. We would be into our 3rd year of not paying property taxes in Pennsylvania. And so it's like, the thing is, get started now, set a deadline. Look,
it's hard to get anything done if you don't have a deadline, especially with the General Assembly. So my goal is to, yes, I want to set the deadline. And yes, I want to talk about, how do we place all that revenue that, our townships, our counties, and our schools need to survive. There is a way. It's all math. And we can figure that out and we can have that conversation. But first, we need to agree that we're going to get rid of this thing we call property tax in Pennsylvania, which is the worst, most unfair, inequitable tax of all our tax systems in Pennsylvania are broken and they're fragmented. But this one is the worst one. And it's the most expensive one because with no other tax system, do we have to spend millions of dollars just to figure out how much tax is owed? You might, I mean, your county, Dauphin County, Lebanon County, we spend millions of dollars just to run an assessment office to assess on a continuing basis, making sure those property values are, and quite frankly, once the county says, here's the assessed value of your property, within a day, that's out of date. And it's very expensive to do. Here in Lebanon County, we last did a countywide reassessment in 2012. It cost $3 million. That's $55 a property. There was a lot of appeals afterwards, which was cost even more money, but it cost $55 a property. And as soon as those assessments were stated, they were out of date.
Right.
Because, neighborhoods improve, folks improve their properties. Some neighborhoods go to hell. Schools get better, schools get worse. And it's like, markets fluctuate. It's like, it's just a ridiculous system of trying to figure out spending a lot of money to figure out how much tax is owed. We don't do that with any other tax system in Pennsylvania.
Without asking you how you would replace it, because we know that that's not part of the.
I'm sorry, I lost you here because my earbuds went out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are going to have to speak up.
Okay.
Without asking you how you would replace it, because that's not for this conversation, do you think there are some less painful ways to go about generating that much of tax revenue?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
There are plenty of ways to go about generating that kind of revenue. I'm going to see if my Bluetooth turned off here.
And I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think one of the unfair things about property taxes is if I rent and Bill owns a house, he's the only one of the two of us paying property taxes, right?
In reality, what happens there, Joe, is
the person that owns the property.
Well, yeah, but they pay it, but they're obviously pricing their rent at a level that they're going to be able to pay that tax. So they're in effect the renters are paying it that way, not directly to the municipality or school district, but it's in their rent.
So everybody's paying it somehow. Right.
Yeah.
And
hey, you know what? I'm going to sign off here quick, and I'll sign right back on and
That's
get
fine.
my things working here.
All right.
Hey, Joe, one of the things I think it's important to point out when you get into this issue is that I've been involved indirectly with state government in the news industry for 25 years. And this has been essentially a 30-year problem where it's come up. Frank Ryan, who was a representative represented a district in Lebanon County, he had a plan a few years ago, and there was another senator up in the Schuylkill County area that had a plan, and others before them. And this legislation never goes anywhere. Of course, they were offering a plan to replace the revenue, and Russ isn't doing that. He's going a different direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. I don't know what was going on there with my.
I just pointed out to Joe and our listeners and viewers that this property tax issue has been at least 30 years running. Frank Ryan had a plan, and other people have tried it, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. There's debates and hearings and all that, but never any success. So at this point, do you have any, I know you have some co-sponsors, but is there any momentum to get this bill, HB 900, in a committee and discussed and maybe voted on?
Well, it's tough. I mean, it's before the finance committee now. And look, I'm a Republican. The House is being run by Democrats. I mean, that's an uphill battle right there. And even when we were in charge as Republicans, I got a lot of pushback from Republicans on, how we're going to do that. But I think, though, that if you have this deadline and then you can propose kind of a general outline of options for plans for replacing the revenue, I think people will get more susceptible. And when they see that, I mean, a lot of people see this as the insurmountable mountain, because it's such a, and look, I'll be frank with you. I just read some guy sent me some professor had written a history of property taxes in Pennsylvania. The battle over property taxes in Pennsylvania goes all the way back to William Penn.
Okay.
I mean, it's not just 30 years old. It's not just 50 years old. I mean, it goes all the way back to William Penn. So, I think though that if you actually have some reasonable policy ideas for how you're going to replace that revenue, and you're not threatening the public school system, you're not, threatening the existence of your county, and it looks like you have some realistic choices to do, and you're, maybe modeling after what some other states do. I think people would be warmer to the idea, but again, the first step is not getting people to argue about how we're going to replace the revenue. The first step is to get people to agree that, look, property tax is so it's anti-freedom and it's anti-liberty. And I mean, the right to acquire, possess, and protect property is listed in Article 1, Section 1 of our Declaration of Rights in our state constitution. The only thing that comes before them is life and liberty itself. I mean, this property rights come before the right to free speech, the right to a jury trial, the right to assemble, the freedom of religion. It's all those are secondary in our Constitution to property rights. So I just can't believe that we are taxing a fundamental right that has been declared since the beginning of time in Pennsylvania, since we've had a Declaration of Rights in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
And we just got to figure our way out of it, because actual home ownership, not having to rent your home from the government, not having to be held hostage, by your school district, your township, and your county, just to stay in a home that you bought and paid for and maybe paid off years ago.
Right.
It's like the ultimate piece of liberty for me. And look, that's what I'm all about. It's all about liberty. Yeah.
Did you look at, this wouldn't be groundbreaking, because I know we have states in the United States that don't have property taxes, and somehow they're providing the money for municipal services and school districts.
Well, there are not states that don't have property taxes.
Okay.
There are states that have much lower property taxes than we have. There are also states that have much higher property taxes than we have.
New Jersey.
Yeah. New Jersey is bad. New Hampshire is actually pretty bad for property taxes. Even though it's supposed to be this whole libertarian takeover up there, their property taxes are pretty bad. But the thing is that we have other methods of taxation that are more indicative of somebody's ability to pay.
Right.
Property ownership used to be indicative of somebody's ability to pay. But now when you're talking about, grandma who's 80 years old living on Social Security alone, maybe she's bringing home $15,000, having to pay a $6,000 property tax bill is a big deal.
Sure.
And she's choosing between paying rent to the government or, paying the copay on the medication she needs to survive, or buying food. And that's just ridiculous, and we shouldn't be pushing people out of their houses just because they have 3 years of, and that's what happens. You have 3 years of financial hard times, you can't afford your property taxes. Guess what? Your property's going up on sheriff's sale, and you lose everything. Just because you had 3 years of financial bad times. And you don't even have to have bad times. It just has to be you're on a fixed income and your property taxes are outrageous enough that you can't afford. It's ridiculous.
30 years of payments down the drain, out the window.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to share one other thing on different level on this thing. I used to go to a local coffee shop. Of course, coffee shops, Russ, are where all the problems of the world get solved.
That's where Bill and I officially met at that coffee shop, right? Yeah.
But I sat for years with a friend who's since passed away, who was a school superintendent at various school districts. And he always would talk about how the property tax, when it came time to craft a budget, was the one source of income that was very consistent you could rely on. So when we get rid of it, that's going to be a key thing of finding steady streams of income for these people at all levels of government. That how are they going to do that for their planning?
Yeah, stability is important. I mean, stability is important for all the different jurisdictions that rely on property tax now. I mean, and that's your counties, your municipalities, and your school boards. I mean, I'm not looking to shaft any of them or give them some kind of fiscal roller coaster ride. But there are other ways to do it. And if you take a look at some of our other systems of taxation, within those systems lies the answer. It really does lie the answer. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to educate people about how broken property tax is, how broken our other tax system is. And by the time I get done, I think, look, we talked about this at the beginning. What's your job as a state legislator? I think one of my greatest jobs is to educate people and to communicate reality to some people. And so hopefully by the time I get done with this, it will be as apparent to everyone else, as it has been to me for years, what the real solution is to the property tax problem in Pennsylvania.
I wish you good luck on that.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, it's tough to do when we live in. I mean, this is the era of short attention span theater.
Right.
You know, people want that quick hit. They don't want to take time to read and learn. I'll do my best though, and then people can just throw rocks at me. You know,
if I can get enough time, one of the things we can do here, we've been doing this for about 52 minutes. I mean, is to actually cut up the video, like some key things you've said tonight, and put those out there as well, so that they have a 30 or 40 second hit of what's going on. But we also have a couple other questions for you. But Joe, do we get any questions from viewers?
We have, first of all, Bill Minsker.
Okay.
He said, "Hi, Bill."
Yeah. Hi, Bill. Bill's the other mayor of Linglestown.
Yeah. The co-mayor. He said, "Eliminate property tax, ? Absolutely 100%. Replace property tax with the necessary shared increases in state sales tax and state income tax distributed on a statewide formula of school district need." So that's Mr. Minsker's idea. Okay. And then Tim McCarthy said, "Good evening, Russ." And
good evening, Tim.
And I think the other comment that Mr. Minsker made, he just wanted to remind everyone that there's a candidates night in the St. Thomas Social Hall of the Linglestown Firehouse on Wednesday, October 15th at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be reminding people between now and then about that. You'll be there, Bill, right?
Let me address one thing that the other Bill said.
Sure.
He talked about doing the personal income tax and the sales tax, and then have the state distribute it. I think that that's one of the things that I want to break people of. When people think of personal income tax, they think of sales tax. They always think of Harrisburg. In other states, and some places in Pennsylvania, those taxes are collected locally and they stay local. So let's not assume that Harrisburg is going to fairly distribute anything. When Harrisburg distributes money, it's always done politically. So we want to build a system where revenues stay. That's the one good thing about property tax, is that it's collected locally and it stays local, doesn't get filtered through the political system in Harrisburg. And what you collect is what you get. And I would like to keep that at just that element of whatever source of revenue we're going to use to fund our counties, our municipalities, and school boards, because you don't want to. Anytime you send money to Harrisburg, there's a slice taken off the top for politics. There's another slice for bad politics, and then there's another slice for waste, fraud, and abuse. And then you get a lot less than you collected.
You know what the best example of that was I saw in my time watching was whenever casino gambling was And then, so they have all this money coming. I was watching the state legislature, and they're figuring out. I mean, it was billed as a tax reduction strategy, but
It
then
sure
when they
was.
got down to it, money was going everywhere, different
Yeah.
places.
And
Yeah,
you're on the gaming committee, right? Representative Diamond?
I'm the Republican chairman of the
I thought
Gaming
you were,
Oversight
yeah.
Committee, so I'm very familiar with what you're saying, and I'm very familiar with the arguments you were making. I remember Ed Rendell saying, "quote I can reduce property taxes by 30% standing on my head." That's his quote. It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Not even
And
standing on his feet did it happen.
no, it did not happen. But those are the promises that were made. Now everybody does get property tax relief exactly as it is written in the Gaming Act. And last year it provided $1 billion of property tax relief for homestead and farmstead, people who own the properties they live in. But if you look at your property tax bill, it's a tiny slice, and it's been far eclipsed by what your property tax have increased since 2004. It's nothing near what politicians promised. And, they certainly overpromised in order to get public support for bringing gaming to Pennsylvania. But that's the way Harrisburg works. And that's why you don't want to rely on sending all your money to Harrisburg first and then hoping to get it back.
Well, it's a very appetizing proposal. It sounds like you got a good kind of head of steam, and there's a lot to work out, but we wish you well with that.
Thank you.
I own a property, and I tend to agree with you. And I don't mind being taxed in some other realm. I mean, I know that we need the tax dollars, the revenue. So good luck.
And look, there's a lot of people who just don't want to pay any taxes.
Right.
Look, you're still gonna pay taxes. It's just going to be more fair, and it's going to be more economical because we won't be spending all that money to assess the value of properties to figure out how much tax is owed.
Right. Okay. So
I have maybe a question to wrap things up. We had talked about some things earlier today.
Yeah.
We had mentioned earlier, Russ, that you had at least attempted to get on the ballot for governor. You talked about Governor Rendell. I wanted to create a situation here. If you were governor starting tomorrow, what are 1 to 3 things that you would be on top of your list to do?
Attack property taxes and actually be honest about it would be number 1 on my list. I think totally unlock the ability to take advantage of Pennsylvania's the energy that we're sitting on top of. Energy would pay for everything that we want to do, that everybody wants to do in Pennsylvania, whether it's completely and totally fund public education to the degree everybody wants to, whether it's creating absolute school choice and funding public education, addressing all the needs of the poor. Energy is the key to everything in Pennsylvania. We were once this industrial powerhouse, and we could be again, and we can do it responsibly. We can do it with great respect for our environment, but we have to unlock it. If I were governor, I would start right there, because that gives you the economic power to actually address all the other needs that we have here in Pennsylvania. And, I wish we could get out of this, right, left kind of fighting over energy. And we could just all realize that that really is the secret to unlocking Pennsylvania and making sure that our young population is not leaving Pennsylvania and going to other states. That really is number 1. Energy.
When you say energy, Russ, are you talking? I know natural gas would be on the list, but what other ones?
Well, look, I'm sure you're familiar with, the fact that TMI maybe or is being started back up. Look, this whole AI thing, I don't know if you realize this, but our whole world is going to change within the next 5 years with AI. And that is very energy dependent.
Right.
And if we're producing that energy here in Pennsylvania, those tech firms, they're going to be coming to Pennsylvania, so we don't have to transmit the energy hundreds of miles to them. They want to be right where the energy is. So if we can produce that energy here in Pennsylvania, we can have those tech firms here. That is just jobs beyond belief. And we're going to see the world is going to be revolutionized in the next 5 to 10 years. You're not going to be able to recognize it. It's going to be totally different. And if we don't get ourselves out from behind the 8 ball on the energy front, we're just going to lose out to other states. There's no two ways about it.
Okay. We're going to wrap things up here. Bill, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I have
No
a
problem.
feeling that Representative Diamond would want to be involved in this. We have some trivia questions.
Oh,
yeah.
I knew. Bill,
All right.
come on, buddy. You got to get in here and try to.
It depends on the topic. Go ahead.
I think.
Yeah, I can't do current pop culture. Don't ask any.
I don't
pop
have
culture.
any pop culture.
I'm an
Okay.
old guy.
All right, let's start with this. How many recognized countries are there in the world? If you get close, we'll give you a ding, ding, ding for that.
183.
That's kind of like the border of ding, ding, ding. Bill?
I'll go with 195.
Oh, it's 195. Bill,
Oh wow! Right on the nose.
I mean, I
was a guess.
liked Russ's answer. You know, that wasn't bad at all. And I
Yeah,
think
he
it
wins.
could be-
Still wins both showcases, doesn't he?
There are,
Forgetting it right on the
there are
nose.
195 UN member countries and 2 recognized non-member nations, Vatican City and the state of Palestine. Okay. The first trip to the moon, Apollo 11, had a crew of 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and who? The third.
Michael Collins.
Very good. Michael Collins was the command module pilot. Armstrong
Poor
was the
Sap. That
commander.
poor Sap was stuck up there while those guys got to
Okay.
walk in the room.
Dude,
Oh,
he
man.
didn't get much credit, did he?
No, no.
at
He
least
could have
not
flew
enough.
off without him. He could have flew off without him.
The Gulf of Mexico, or whatever you want to call it now, is bordered by 3 countries. What 3 countries is that Gulf bordered by?
United States,
Mexico,
2.
and Cuba.
Bam! All right, Bill, come on, buddy.
No, Russ got that one.
2-1. I know. I said I want you to stay toe to toe here. I got 2 more. Which artist is the only 3-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee? 1 musical artist. And I'll give you 1 hint. He actually is a rock and roll artist. He's not a country. He's not R&B. He's not rap, hip hop.
Is it the guy with the Rolling Stones? I can't think of his name. right now.
No.
What's his name, anyways?
Are you thinking of Mick Jagger, Keith
Yes.
Richards? Okay, no. Those guys kind of just stayed as a band. Like, you have to have gotten outside of your band as a solo artist or joined a different band.
Sammy Hagar.
No, sir.
No. Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, then
All right.
I want to throw one out here because
Well, I got to
Russ
tell you
looked
guys the answer to this.
Russ
Bill.
looked like him at one time. Peter Frampton.
Well, that's not the answer, but
And you looked like Peter Frampton back in the day.
man,
there's a Frampton picture of me on Facebook if somebody wants to dig it up.
so the answer to that one is Eric Clapton. He was
Oh, of course. Yeah.
inducted
Cream. Yep,
92 with the Yardbirds, 93 with Cream, and
Yep.
2000 as a solo artist. One
There you
more,
go.
one left. This is tough. It doesn't sound like it would be, but who holds the Penn State all-time rushing record? Rushing yards, the record.
Jacana Carter.
Kajana Carter? No.
No.
That's a great guess.
Curtis Enos.
No, it's another great guess.
Franco Harris.
No, it's not Kajana. It's not DJ Dozier. It's not Saquon Barkley. It's not Kurt Warner. It's not
Miles Sanders.
No, it's not
No.
Blair Thomas. and it's
Lydell
not
Mitchell?
Larry. No, I think he's 9th. This is tough.
Wow.
You want me to just give it to you?
Yeah, please.
Evan Royster,
Oh, no way.
who played from 2007 to 2010, 3,932 rushing yards.
What happened to him after he played for Penn State?
I don't know. Maybe he just was one of those guys that just was more conditioned for success at the college level, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know what happened.
We're just
to him.
thankful for Saquon Barkley.
We are.
We are. Go Birds. Go Birds.
Where do you like to eat in Lebanon County? I sold food for a broadline distributor, Cisco, for many years. I just like to ask that question, Representative.
Well, right down the street from my house is Rotunda Brothers. Rotunda Brewing or Rotunda Restaurant and Brewing Company. I've known those boys for a long time. I'm so proud of them for what they've built. I do like going to the Rising Sun in Campbelltown.
That's a
It's a
great
great
restaurant.
place.
Yeah.
Fredericksburg Eagle Hotel, and there's a great place in Myerstown called Do Goods. Fantastic eats. I hate to leave anybody out here. Harper's Tavern. Harper's
been there.
Tavern. Oh my gosh, they make a great prime rib out there. There's Moose's LZ. We have so many great places to eat here.
You do. I think the Bluebird does a great job too.
Bluebird's great place.
Yeah.
We've got the wetlands at Pine Meadows Golf Course. There's just so many great places to eat here. Yeah.
Mhm. Bill, sorry about that. Have we derailed with the trivia and the restaurants?
It's fine. It's fine. I got a question right. Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for me. Representative
Yeah,
Russ Diamond, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Hey,
It was a
thanks
good
for
time.
having me, guys.
Yep. Let's thank our sponsors one more time, and then we'll cut everybody loose here. Team PA AAU basketball, thank you to them. Be a hero, hire a hero. We're going to bring them on and let everybody know what they do. It's kind of like an employment agency for military veterans. And a lot of times they need some extra help because of some disabilities, just some injuries that they're dealing with. And that's what these folks do at Be a Hero, Hire a Hero. And of course, Rickabaw's Electric, Dan Rickabaugh. So for Bill Bostic and Representative Russ Diamond, I'm Joe Gillaway. This is This and That, the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
See you, Russ.
Have a great evening. Thanks, Russ.